Thank you all and welcome again to the first panel of EA Conference 2025. I will first like to introduce my panelists in detail. We have Mr. Mohamed Isak Fatir. He is a Somali career diplomat and senior official at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has served as the director of, he's from my left. He has served as the director of the Africa Department, UN Coordinator Advisor in the International Cooperation Department, and in the offices of the Minister, Deputy Minister, and Permanent Secretary. He led Somalia's campaign for a UN Secretary Council seat 2025-2026 and contributed to this East African Community Accession talks before his appointment as Director General for EAC Affairs. He holds an MA in Global Diplomacy and Sustainable Development from Lewis University at Rome and a BA in International Relations from EACON University in Istanbul. We also have Mr. Sorensen. He's the team leader and senior expert on investment and trade for the EU-funded support Somali Dialogue on Investment and Trade project called ESDIT, implemented by the Co-Water International. With over 35 years of experience in international development, economic growth, impact finance, trade and private sector leadership, he has worked across Africa and Asia with a strong focus on Somalia since 2013. His contributions include advancing impact finance, supporting human capital development, expanding access to financial capital, and helping formalize the Somali banking sector in partnership with organizations like the EU, World Bank, FAO, IFAD, ILO, FCDO, and others. We also have Mr. Björn Richter. He is a cluster coordinator for the German Department Cooperation to the East African Community. He brings over 20 years of leadership experience in portfolio management and development across Europe, Asia, and Africa, including more than 6 years in digital executive roles. He currently supports the EAC in advancing regional integration and driving digital information transformation across its 8 member countries. We also have Dr. Abdisalam H. Omar. He is a Somali economist, diplomat, and public servant. He is the presidential envoy, a special envoy for the East African Community, and he has previously served as the Somalia's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Over the course of his career, he has held senior leadership roles in both Somalia and United States, including the Governor of the Central Bank of Somalia, Director of the UNDP Somalia Financial Service and Governance Program, Chief of Staff in the Executive Office of the Mayor of Washington, D.C., and Chief Business Officer for the city's public schools. And last but not least, we have Dr. Felix Otieno Odhiambo. He is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and partner at the Javed Campbell Felix and Smith Advocates LLB in Nairobi. He serves as Director of Examinations at the Council of Legal Education and is on leave from his role as a law lecturer at Kenyatta University. His research focuses on land, natural resources, and international environmental law. Dr. Odhiambo has also taught the Catholic University of Eastern Africa and previously worked as State Counsel at the Office of the Attorney General and Department of Justice. He holds a PhD in law from the University of Dar es Salaam and LLM and LLB from the University of Nairobi and BEd from the Kenyatta University. Please put your hands together for my wonderful panelists. And let me not forget about myself, even though the panelists are humbling me with their impressive bios. My name is Farhia Mohamud. I am a researcher. I work with a think tank called Somali Public Agenda. We do research on governance, peace building, and a lot of issues. We also write about regional integration. I personally authored a research report last year which focuses on the opportunities and challenges that Somalia is facing in joining the East African community. We are starting our panel. I will ask the panelists some questions, then I will give you an opportunity to reflect and ask questions. I would like to start with Dr. Hadliya. I would like you to first talk us through the EAC and the steps that Somalia is taking currently to achieve the economic or market integration. Please welcome.
Thank you, Ifrah, and thanks to all of you. I think that a lot of information have been given today on the East African community. But I want all of you, particularly the young Somalis here, to focus on two phases of this process. One is the customs union, and the other one is common market. Let's focus on those two. And if you don't have a customs union, then you cannot have a common market, because the customs union comes first. My brother Ahmed talked about the four pillars: the customs union, the common market, the common currency, and then political federation. Let's put aside the common currency and the political federation. That's probably 10 years down the line, and we will see what happens. And if one wants to really understand the EAC, one has to look at the European Union. It's a carbon copy of the European Union. European Union, I don't know if you remember or not, it started with the European Commission. And it was a commission for a long time, until they have reached the status they have today. So that's where the journey is heading. But today, we think about the customs union, and we think about the common market. And let's just start with that. I would say that Somalia, and we are in Somalia, so we talk about Somalia and the EAC, would benefit from the customs union much more than any other group. We are closer to the sea than many others, except Tanzania and Kenya, but we are on the Red Sea, and then we are on the Indian Ocean. So it's possible that if we do the customs union properly, that most of the commodities and the goods that come to the region will come through either the ports of the Indian Ocean or the ports of the Red Sea. And that's very critical. That leads for Somalia to have a robust infrastructure, whether it's trains or highways or airplanes and much more. And this is a very critical step for Somalia, and we need to think about that. So that's one. And then access to a larger market. Yoweri Museveni, the president of Uganda, when we were doing this work, said, why are we talking about it? Somalis are already in East Africa. There is a little Mogadishu in Nairobi. There is another one in Kampala. There is one in South Sudan. There is one in Rwanda. And there is one to be made in Tanzania and other places. So we're already there. And that market is ready for us. And we need to deal with it. We also need to reduce trade barriers. That's what the customs union comes in. That you have to have a uniformity in the whole region. Do we have a uniformity in the region today? There are different levels that the countries in the East Africa are doing. Number one, Kenya is probably the most advanced in this situation, and in many other situations and elements of the EAC. Maybe Uganda is next, and then Tanzania, and then up and coming is Rwanda. But the others, South Sudan, Burundi, Congo, and Somalia are lacking behind, and we need to really work on that. Well, this is specifically the next issue is a predictable trade environment. It's up to the Somali government and Somali businesses and the universities to create a conducive environment for other people to come, not only to come and trade, but also to have a foreign direct investment, what's called as the FDI. There are many challenges that are facing Somalia. Harmonizing the EAC and the Somali legal system is a big issue. And we need to think about that. We need to strengthen our economic institutions. Some of them don't even exist. Others need to be strengthened.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdiya. I would like now to come back to Mr. Fatir from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Welcome, please. I would like to ask you about the current status of Somalia in terms of market integration and also about the integration roadmap that the ministry has developed last year.
Thank you so much, Farhia, and let me start by appreciating the distinguished panelists who are also present here with me, and our distinguished guests from Somalia and our partners. The Somali integration to the East Africa is the early stage, as my colleague Ahmed has explained it, and also our envoy just said quick things about that. But however, let me reflect back in terms of what actually we have done so far and what we are planning to do so far. Recently, we are 1 year old as Somali became the 8th member of the East African community. And now we have taken several steps to ensure that how we can measure progress in order to have a successful implementation into the roadmap aspect. So starting from establishing a dedicated office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that coordinates between Somalia and East African community and Somali agencies and ministries as well, and also manages the status implementation of the community as well. On the other hand, since our joining, we have taken steps that is, we can fairly say that it is the basic infrastructure and basic steps in order to have a full integration into the community. In Mogadishu, we have established the National Trade Committee, which actually embedded and mandated to report any trade barriers between the community in everywhere, all the partner states. For example, if there is a Somali citizen in Kenya or in Rwanda or Tanzania or elsewhere in the EAC partner states faces challenges, okay, they can report to this committee, and this committee would raise to the Secretary General, and then Secretary General with the Council of Ministers are going to raise to the heads of state, which are the summit, and then the summit makes directive is that. Giving a very concrete and relevant example to that, 2 months ago, I think I will be standing for correction, but however, it is 2 months ago that when Tanzania adopted a national act or national policy that prohibits foreign people to start or establish small businesses. And as you may know, that there are many Somali people in Dar es Salaam or in Tanzania in general, and there are many also Kenya or other partner states also present in Tanzania. And we raise this as a bilateral. We also raise this as through East African existing frameworks and mechanisms, and we have succeeded that Tanzania accepted that this may not affect the East African community members. So already it's working, and we are in a very good position of that. We also established that other committee that deals with the services and goods, because as you may be aware, and according to the statistics, East African countries currently trade themselves on food and milk and beverages. So in that terms, we also established that committees monitoring on that area as well. And we are in a very good term also applying and putting successful policies to achieve the roadmap. Further to that, we also extend our leverage to the community as well. Somalia is now represented in the Secretariat. We have appointed our liaison officer to the Secretary General Office. We also appointed our DLO, which is the Defense Liaison Officer in the Defense Cooperation Component Protocol. And we also appointed, which will be sworn in and will be starting his duty next month when the heads of the state summit adopted the Somali representative in the East African Court of Justice, and he will be officially appointed by the summit next month, November, when we are having the summit in Mombasa. We are now in the process of finalizing the parliament, the East African Parliament representative to Somalia, from Somalia to the East African Parliament, and this will happen very soon. And I think from that point, Somalia will be in a very good position in fulfilling its all first-hand implementation strategies. But further to that also, right after this meeting we conclude, after tomorrow, on next week, 13th of October until 18th of October, we are going to host in Mogadishu a large delegation of people from East African Community Secretariat and partner states that we are working together with all our ministries, government agencies, and every office of the country, that we are going to hold the roadmap implementation strategy. That gives us the opportunity to outline where exactly we are right now and what we are doing so far, and how we can further evaluate and how we can fast track and expedite the process that we have already committed. For example, what we're doing, we were supposed to establish National Revenue Authority next year. However, doing so, it needs a lot of national consultations, it needs a lot of national dialogue between the two structures of government, and that would also something we are now working with the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Trade. We are now establishing task force. We're already in the process of establishing task force that composes the two structure of government, mainly the Director Generals of the Ministry of Finance and Trade from federal member states and federal government of Somalia, and they will be discussing how we can achieve actually a unified customs union. And I think that is where we first of all start. We felt that we need to start on those things first, so that we can answer the question that how Somalia can benefit from the East African community, because we need to prepare the necessary infrastructure. Some infrastructures really depending on politics that we sometimes feel challenges, but however, we're changing the perception of always we need to seek policy guidance in order to implement something, but we are now taking on the leadership of technical advices that the politics and decision makers can go ahead and finally influence the decision. So this roadmap implementation would also give the chance that we evaluate on the process where we are, and then we're coming back to see how we are also taking more further steps to ensure that the roadmap implementation is in progress, and Somalia is committing its commitment is as a regional integration country. Finally, Somalia is now being estimated in active participation in the East African community. All our government institutions are present and participating all activities in the East African community. As we speak, from last year, November, Somalia is the Habutua of the community, which means we are the secretariat of the community. From the summit to the senior officials, we are the secretariat. And this year, November, when we have the summit, we are expected to be the chair of the community, that we are going to chair the summit, the council, the dedicated sectoral councils, the BS coordination committee, until to the senior officials meetings. So Somalia is in the right direction. Somalia is in the right direction to implement and fulfill its commitments in the roadmap integration, not only the roadmap specifically, but also as a country to meet and also take the advantage, not only take advantage from the community, but also contribute to its potential resources to the people of the Somali people are already present in everywhere in the East African community. So I can report us today, we are in a very good direction, and we thank the Somali people that are supporting the government and us as well to fulfill in these terms. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We also can understand the political commitment that the government needs in order to harmonize the national customs and then integrate to the East African community. We hope that next year the ministry will have much more achievements. Next we will be having Mr. Björn about digital initiatives. As a digital expert in East African community, what are the crucial digital logistics in terms of logistics that the Somali government and Somali people can benefit from for meaningful economic integration?
Yes, thank you very much. Congratulations first and foremost. I think it's structures in place, it's political commitment, and there's leadership to seen, in the other 7 partner states, but also in trading partners from outside, being it China, India, UAE, or Europe. As these are the biggest 4 trading partners. So it's a great achievement. and answering your questions, still the question is what is in for the Somalia people, and from our point of view, Somalia is positioning themselves as a leader in innovation and also as an early adapter when it comes to payment systems and when it also comes to connectivity via mobile phones. And that's something obviously countries like Kenya and Rwanda are also having, but you do this from a position of strength through the private sector engagement. So if you would design a key project around that payment link, for example, that makes it easier to send transaction across borders and actually enable then e-commerce with that, you can over time and with good infrastructure as you laid out also increase trade throughout, and this is then modern trade. So and that's enshrined in what you call the cross-border the master plan for cross-border payments, and one of the pilots where Somalia is part on is the interlinkage of the payment systems through a switch. This is a government system that is allowing then the private sector to use safe and secure transactions between Rwanda and Tanzania, and hopefully Kenya and Uganda to come. So from that perspective, it's already on the move. You are connected, you have a payment system and a central bank that is very much driving that. And it's good now to lead this kind of project also for East Africa, that hopefully then Kenya and Uganda and others will join with their own national switch infrastructure.
That's actually good news that Somalia is already on the move in terms of digital era. We also have telecommunications. This morning, people were talking about Hormuz and how we use mobile money. So, can we be a market to East African community in those sectors, like telecommunication and digital, as leading actors?
Well, we are in the midst of establishing a digital market. I think DSG ARIC laid this out in the beginning. There is a digital market existing, and now the question is, what are you doing with it? At the moment, the digital market is very much covered by foreign direct investment, if you want to nicely describe it, or by value extraction in other countries, if you would like to have it a bit more aggressive. It's mainly the US tech companies and also the Chinese e-commerce platforms that are dominating this area. And then the question is, what's the strength of your own data industry? What's the strength of the AI industry and the data centers? Therefore, you need training data. And what, in the nutshell, is also the increase of digital payments and also further e-commerce. So yes, the market is existing, and yes, Somalia is benefiting already a lot from it through the diaspora and obviously also through a lot of systems that you have there. The question is, what is the value extraction for Somalia looking into? And therefore, you need a critical infrastructure. And that's why I think we also supported Somalia to be initial part of the AI Alliance, because you have 3 undersea cables coming into the country. And with that, you have accompanying data that is coming, and you could be basically not only the port for the ships, but also the port for data to come in and go out in the region. And with that, establish quite a strong data industry in the future. And the future is not difficult to achieve, because that is the beautiness in the digital economy. Everybody starts very much on a clean slate. There's not a leader on AI yet. There's also not a leader on data analytics. There's for sure a lot of companies that own the space, but it's never too late because it's an indefinite game.
Thank you so much, Mr. Björn. I would like to now come to Mr. Lee about investment. As an expert in investment and finance impact, I would like to ask you about, what are the factors that can support economic growth in Somalia and also in the region as a whole that will ultimately support the market integration? Please welcome.
Well, thank you. First of all, let me say that it's exciting to be here. Having worked in Somalia for over 13 years, I've seen a lot of improvements, and I think we're in a position today to be proud and congratulatory towards Somalia and achievement. That said, it's the time to also keep going and be encouraged to move forward. In terms of regional integration and also taking advantage of this new EAC market for Somalis, something that you can always rely on with the Somali business is if they see a business opportunity that's out there that's working, they know how to adopt it, adapt it, and take it over and join it. So I think the exposure, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. If one Somali is doing it and doing it well, the others will jump in. I think the exposure that'll be coming now that the EAC integration is happening. For example, our project right now is supporting the Ministry of Commerce in putting together a selection for the MSME EAC trade fair. It's going to expose small businesses to be involved in this regional fair. And, in past fairs, there have been hundreds and hundreds of businesses from some countries. In Somalia, it may be fewer in the beginning, but I guarantee you in a couple of years' time, they'll have exponentially more businesses. And so I think just the very exposure to other practices and other opportunities and in the regional market is going to be good. Something I think that always needs to be considered whenever you're thinking about investment. Investment has an investor and an investee, and there has to be a value proposition to induce the investor to come in and take risk. And in a market like Somalia, the evaluation of risk is difficult because a lot of the legal frameworks are still immature or not yet fully refined. If you think about something as core to the operational foundation as energy, the cost of energy here is very high. The ability to have reliable energy is somewhat low. So there's a tremendous opportunity to come in and invest in the energy space. But the problem with that is, and if you're going to be competitive, you have to be addressing your legal framework. For example, in Somalia, earlier today, they were talking about public-private partnerships, and you saw that pie chart that was shown that had the overwhelming majority of investment in PPPs was in the energy electricity sector. Well, for any kind of a private actor to get involved, you have to have some kind of independent power provider framework that's a legal framework that protects the investor. And also you need to get power purchase agreements that are, again, protected, because if you're going to invest in long-term infrastructure, you have to have a power purchase agreement. So, and Somalia is still in the space where they're working those things out. Some of the work that we're doing with the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources and the National Energy Authority is addressing some of those things. But so I think compared to other regional actors, the legal framework is still somewhat immature, but it's moving in the right direction. So I think those are some of the things that could be done.
Thank you so much. I would like now to come to Dr. Odhiambo about legal aspects, which are the most important things in terms of integration. I would like to ask you about what are the legal reforms that Somalia needs to do in order to integrate the EAC market. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Farhia, for the question. I would like to answer that question not very directly, but I will not be prescriptive, but I would like to do what my brothers from Tanzania call uzushi, just to kind of provoke our thinking. But I want to approach this question from my background as an environmental law researcher. And for me, the involvement of Somalia in the EAC, I begin from the conversation around the coastline. Somalia brings with it 3,300 kilometers long of a coastline, which translates to 830,000 square kilometers of exclusive economic zone. That's massive. Tanzania, the second coastal state in East Africa community, has got a coastline, rather an exclusive economic zone of 242,000 square kilometers. So that's about a quarter of what Somalia has. Kenya has 142,000 square kilometers. That's an eighth what Somalia has. Now, when you combine those three exclusive economic zones of those three East African community states, you are talking of about 1.2 million square kilometers of exclusive economic zone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that brings with it a lot of economic opportunities, fishery resources, travel, transport basically, as well as a lot of economic opportunities, not just for the region, but globally. But as it brings with it those economic opportunities, there are also certain inherent risks that that huge space brings with it. More importantly, it brings with it the challenge of governance of that maritime space. And if we may take our minds back a little bit to the late 1990s and early 2000s, when Somalia's waters were not effectively policed by a state organ, we have the story of illegal dumping of wastes in Somalia's waters. We have illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, IUU, massive IUU fishing activities within Somalia's waters. And the flip side of this problem led to the insecurity that came with piracy. And that problem is not a Somalia problem. It is a regional problem. And with that also, that then brings me to the conversation around if we cannot effectively as a region police these waters, the 1.2 million square kilometers of maritime space for the region, then the problem, a major problem that is going to arise is the problem of customs union, customs in terms of tariffs. Because then it means there's going to be a lot of illegal trade activities that is going to be taking place in these waters. And when you have illegal trade activities, then that breeds what you call black market. And when you have a black market, then it means the benefits that the countries in this region should be benefiting, should be deriving out of legitimate trade is lost. So for me, we must begin to have a conversation around the maritime space, the benefits that it brings, but also more importantly, the possible insecurity that it could bring if the countries do not come together to effectively offer protection to these maritime spaces. And we cannot sit forever and depend on the EU and the Americans to police our waters for us. About 5 days ago, we may recall the conversation that President Trump had when he told the American generals that it is not America's business to police, to protect Kenya and Somalia. That is a conversation that should ring very closely to our hearts. Secondly, in terms of customs, I think it is also imperative that Somalia looks into the illegal trade. A lot of illegal trade activities goes on between Kenya and Somalia. It is reported that much of charcoal that is used for fuel in Kenya comes from Somalia, and that portends deforestation within Somalia's territory. A lot of sugar that is used in Kenya also comes and is traded illegally across Kenyan borders. So that should speak to laws around customs union, laws around our own internal securities, capacities for our own internal security. And also, it should also speak to the need for Somalia to be proactive in terms of, for example, engineering the operationalization of the East African Community Protocol on the environment that went dead before it even came to light. So perhaps this is an area, considering the interest that Somalia would derive, for Somalia to take a more proactive role and kind of help the other partner states that have been sleeping on the East African Community Protocol on environment to probably operationalize that. Thank you so much. I may stop at that.
Thank you so much. You actually touched upon an important aspect of the challenges that the EAC is facing in general. You talked about bilateral disagreements like Somalia and Kenya. In interventions, we already had DRC, Burundi, and Uganda. And also we have the Somali waters case in the ICC, which a verdict was issued, but Kenya is not somehow accepting. So what are the EAC court or EAC in general in maintaining those bilateral relationships? Because we know even after the EAC was formed in 1967, it dismantled because of the three founding member countries, which were Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. So please, I will give you that question, and also closing remarks as we will only take one more questions for each panelist. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Farhia, and thank you for reminding me about the issue of the ICJ dispute. Rather, now it's not a dispute because there is already a court decision. And I would believe that the EAC should form a very important framework within which Somalia should be able to, for lack of a better word, push Kenya for the implementation of the decision of the ICJ. Because it's a valid court decision that is in place. So, whereas the former Kenyan president said Kenya is not ceding an inch of its territory, I don't think that is part of Kenyan territory, because there's a court decision that says it is not part of Kenyan territory. So this is, I believe Somalia's involvement in this, in the EAC provides an important framework, the institutional frameworks within the EAC, more importantly the summit, for example, where those presidents engage at their level, would be a very important framework within which Somalia can actually push that agenda for implementation of the ICJ decision. I do not think there would be necessity for Somalia to even need to invoke the jurisdiction of EACJ, because then why would it need to do that when it has the decision of one of the highest courts of the, the highest court in the world? There is really no need, because the EACJ is not an implementation forum for ICJ decisions. So I think, yes, the EAC forums or frameworks provide useful platforms within which Somalia can engage bilaterally or even from an intergovernmental perspective with its 7 other colleagues for the implementation of some of these challenges that it faces as a country and other countries also face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Odhiambo. That's very good analysis. And also, Somalia, as far as I knew, the Ministry of Justice was doing a justice reform. I think Mr. Fatir will update us on how those reforms are also adhering to, EAC rules. Thank you so much for that. I would also like to give Mr. Hadlier, would you give us a final remark? You talked about having a conducive environment for the EAC and also building institutions. Please welcome for your final remarks.
Thank you, Ifrah. And I want to add my brother here about the ICJ decision. One thing very important is that there is an international boundary, maritime boundary, between Kenya and Somalia for the first time. And I think the rest of it is politics and economics that can be worked out. But it was very important to have. I was the agent when we went to the court And really the big issue was to have a boundary. Like we have a land boundary, also to have there are other issues that are still in there because the economic zone overlaps some islands that also Yemen is claiming. So that's another issue. To your question, Farhia, I think the most important thing here is, I said, customs union and the common market. The two go together. And the common market is an area where Somalis can prosper. A movement of people going from one place to another. If you want, using the education systems. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania have advanced education systems and research institutes that the Somali family and the Somali business people and the young Somalis here can take advantage of it. And going to those countries, once we finish the protocol of the common market, is that if you want to go to Rwanda and go to school, it's like you are from Rwanda. But also we have to accept other East African individuals and companies and other communities to come to Somalia and invest in it, and also take advantage of the long maritime coast and fish. So the future belongs to East Africa as a group. We cannot be strong and vibrant if we divide each other. So I would end my saying that let's go for prosperity and let's go for inclusiveness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hadlia. Now I will come to Mr. Lee about capacity building and also labor market participation. After joining the EAC market, Somalis had fear or concern about overtaken by the EAC countries. I would ask you about what can they do, or what are the opportunities for local small and also medium enterprises in Somalia to be competitive in the EAC market? Please hold.
Thank you for that question. To have the EAC market available but not take advantage of it would be a shame, because the whole point of having this expansion is to get the benefit of reaching that market. That said, the Somali private sector come into this equation somewhat behind the game. They haven't been as every business is different. Some are more sophisticated than others, but many of the Somali companies may not feel they're competitive. And that may be a reality for the time being until they become more competitive. But the thing they need to do is, before you can engage there in the broader market, you need to engage here in the dialogue. And so policymakers shouldn't be acting in a vacuum, coming up with policy and how and what they'll do. Even joining the EAC needs to be informed. How you stay active there also needs to be informed. A robust public-private dialogue and feedback network or system, feedback loop from the private sector to policymakers to advise the law, engage the law, and also be realistic in how they can, ask for and get protections is important and imperative. So I think, again, if I'm betting in the long run, I would bet on the Somali to come out ahead and figure out how to go into the system and make it work for them. But in the short run, coming in, there may be some exposure to say, well, we may not be as competitive in certain areas. And there are structural reasons why that could be the case here, because the cost of doing business here is disproportionately higher, just the whole cost of energy piece. And so that's a reality. I mean, strategically, there may be reason to put energy in or put more effort into building certain sectors over other sectors just because the cost of doing business is so high. But anyway, so my final point is private sector needs to engage in public-private dialogue, and policymakers need to engage the private sector to have that dialogue as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very well put. I would also like to ask now Mr. Björn my second question about digital, investment. What is the future for digital in the EAC? Today here we launched AI, and we have a lot of youth in the East African, countries. Can we, maybe this is very ambitious, but can the EAC aim to make digital section as one of its 8 one of these four founding pillars of the treaty? Like, is that important, or in other ways, what can we do to, in terms of common market, what can we do in terms of digital investment in other ways?
Yes, thank you. Well, the ICT sector, that's the old school name for, I think, the digital market. The ICT sector is already a priority under the trade and service protocol. So it has been a sector that has already started to work together, and you see a lot on the owner network is basically abolishing of the roaming cost in the region. Some of the countries joined that owner network, and it's still under review. And it was one of the biggest achievements of the European Union to actually then come with a joint currency, abolishment of roaming, and obviously also free movement of labor and people. So I think there's something where Somalia can join. And in the beginning, the private sector will definitely lose some of the assets or incomes, but on a long run, they will benefit because then it's cross-border connectivity, and you can definitely build other modalities. Yeah, you can build joint data exchanges. You can build certain use cases for health or insurances on top of these things, and then you can travel, for example, with your yellow passport, a yellow vaccination passport to Tanzania where it's needed. You can then also buy maybe insurance as a private sector to go across borders, and maybe also implement a simplified trade regime, which is actually allowing businesses under $5,000 to travel relatively easy across border to implement this via digital means. So it's there. I think the big question is, besides this operation of what you already have, like the mobile phone corporation and also the existing data market, if you go one step forward and say this is a region where a lot of people are investing, Microsoft is investing $400 million US in the next years in AI infrastructure, and you're steering also this investment and actually making sure it's also then being implemented by young people in the region, and it's also taxed then by the companies here. And it's a big discussion, taxing big companies. I think the EU is doing since a couple of years, and I think that might be a very good partnership where the East African community is bringing in 320 million people, huge talent, huge data, and obviously a very strategic position. And to partner with India and Europe might be a counterweight to what we experience already with the American and China way. But then the question is, who is building the data centers, who is then using the algorithm, and who is also then extracting value for Somalia, Kenya, and Uganda. This is a thing you can only do together. That's also what the European Union learned. That's too big to fail, and that's also something you can only do as a block of 320 million, if any. And the jury is still out on this topic. So I think it's not that the market is clear, and it's also clear how we use AI in the future. It's happening now. And any lead from Somalia on this, even if it's a small one, will lead to an industry that is big. Just to end with some good figures, Kenya has around 10 to 12% of the digital market of the GDP. Rwanda has 30%. Somalia is under 10%. I don't know the right numbers, but it's potential growth, and you see peers in the region picking.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Björn. Finally, we come to Mr. Fatir. I would like to ask you about, you advocated for Somalia seat in the UN Security Council. Like, what is that position for Somalia in terms of East African community?
Well, thank you so much. I think before I directly answer that question, I would like also to extend to the overall discussion we're having to a few points that we are still doing, and I think a lot of people will be very much interested to hear that. Currently, as we are also in the process of implementation, the integration roadmap and the EAC integration to the Somali integration to the EAC, we are now working with the Ministry of Labor in terms of the common market aspect is where we are working to see how we can able to align our residence permit policies and regulations, and also work permit regulations to the EAC already adopted policies. Further to that, we are also working with the immigration department. Soon, the immigration department will be printing the third generation passport, the Somali third generation passport. And now we started to see how we can align the East African Community passport. But before that, we are now working on the terms of standardization and infrastructure that is necessary to put in place with aligning the Somali, the third generation passport of Somalia to the East African passport. So these are many actually activities that we are doing, and I would like to also say that accumulated of such activities are actually what we call the integration of the EAC. So we are actually in that road, and we will be expediting our effort. Our collective effort is to achieve a full integration to the East African community. Coming back to the question, I believe the UN Security Council, Somalia joining this UN Security Council, and Somalia joining East African community, Somalia achieving the full depth relief, and Somalia also getting the lifting arms embargo was a milestone, all of them together, that Somalia has achieved as whole country, as a Somali citizens and Somali government. And by the way, this has happened one time, last year, 2024. So it was 2024, we can actually say that it was a year that Somalia achieved a lot of big milestones that contribute to this institutional building, good governance, and sustainable development in the wider region, and with also in Somalia. I think the East African community is a framework that Somalia joined it, and also provides that reliable cooperation between partner states, and also it also gives the space of negotiating and dialoguing in different areas where partner states are in the different positions. That is something that EAC provides, and also that is something that Somalia has stepped into it, and Somalia is enjoying the privileges comes with that. And with the UN Security Council, nevertheless, is a 2-year term position that Somalia is now a member, and next year, also in the first month of next year, we will be the month of the chair of the Security Council, by the way. And this is just a temporary seat, but it's also international seat that show the world that Somalia is coming back to its rightful place in terms of politics, in terms of diplomacy, in terms also as a country that is coming back from a long setback of conflict and government institutions. So I think Somalia is not only doing good things only in East Africa, but it's also in doing internationally positioned areas and positions. But what I want to emphasize that the EAC and the UN Security Council, the difference is that EAC is a long-term future of beneficial, that we are willing to see and to accommodate all our people and resources, as we are now started off assessing that the Somali oil and gas, and that Somali oil and gas will not only be the Somali oil and gas alone, it will be the region. And all our partner states will be the first countries that is going to take advantage, and Somalia is willing to process and facilitate that potential resources with its neighboring countries and also with the East African countries. So I think that in final conclusion, all these places that Somalia are a member of it is only contributing to the public diplomacy and the image of Somalia in the wider region of the continent, as well as also in international position. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fatir, and all my panelists for that wonderful discussion. I would like now to open the floor for the participants. Because of time, maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions. Yes, I see one hand there. Another one.
Bismillah. My name is Saeed Osman Bashir. I'm a law lecturer, a lawyer and academic. I would like to ask Dr. Odhiambo. Maybe my question will be directed to Dr. Odhiambo because it's the legal part of the question. The paper was presented by one of the presenters on legal mechanisms for elimination of non-tariff barriers. The researcher indicated and highlighted that there is a gap as to regards on there is no law that mandates members to enforce concerning the non-tariff barriers. Also, the researcher highlighted that there is no organ that enforces laws. So my question is, despite enforcement mechanisms used by the East African community to deal with non-tariff barriers, what are your recommendations in narrowing that gap? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Said, for your concise question. Okay, let that one take place.
Hello and good evening. My name is Abdisalam H, and I just want to ask a very simple question, but maybe very tricky. Over the last 2 decades, East Africa has proposed two, like customs union in 2005 and common market protocol in 2010, and still yet it's not reached a deeper integration in the trade. So my question is, why does strong legal and institutional alignment not automatically lead to deeper cooperation? Because of we have seen like custom union in 2005, and yet and in 2010 they have achieved another milestone, which is a common market protocol, and yet the total trade in the East African community is like 50% only. The total trade in the East African community, that's very sad. So why the East African community has not reached a deeper integration in trade? That's my question.
Thank you so much. We have last question here.
Thanks for the floor. I want to get an information. As you are presenting the situation of Somalia's integration in the EAC markets, the first question is, first, what is now, today, the rate of dependency of the Somalia government on the revenues coming from what is called the customs from the international trade? Because if you want to get in customs union, there are a kind of losses, because there are some revenues which your government will lose. Please let me know.
Hello, thank you. My name is Isak. I have a question for Richard, and my question is related to the AI. As we know, the artificial intelligence is shaping the world, and many organizations are moving towards that, and the countries as well. In Somalia, we have first time in history built a data center that is capable to run applications based on artificial intelligence and building models. And as you know, the Somalis, we have our own language and culture, and we need to have our own AI that understands us, how our brain really works, and how our business and technology and innovation works. My question is, do you have any solution for students who wants to learn by practicing artificial intelligence models and also businesses who wants to integrate to the AI in order to solve a lot of business problems that we don't have resource in Somalia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will give Mr. Odhiambo to answer to the first question about legal aspects.
Thank you very much. Let me stand. There is Mr. Omar Bashir's question, which is very related to the question from my brother from that corner. Mr. Omar asked the question, what recommendations I would have in terms of narrowing the gap on implementation of non-tariff barriers. And my brother there has raised the question, why there is no deeper integration despite these milestones, important milestones having been achieved by the EAC. My view about these two is that, the principle of implementation of the EAC as a regional integration is the principle of intergovernmentalist. So that implementation of those milestones depends on the interest, the ability of various governments in terms of whether they want to comply or not. And this is very much opposed to the issue, for example, in the EU where it is supranational, so that decisions of the EU directly apply to the respective jurisdictions of the individual member states. And for me, I think that is the weakest link in terms of implementation, the lived realities of the EAC. Because we take decisions at the EAC level as to whether or not there is going to be implementation or compliance still now depends on the government goodwill. And that does not lead, that leaves the community in a very vulnerable position. So that each individual member state is like you are in and also not in at the same time. Either you choose to be in or there is no reason as to why you should even be in the first place. And you will recall, if you look at, for example, in the EAC treaty, the principle of variable geometry is very critical. So that there is progressive implementation, and then countries that have the ability or that are willing to implement decisions of the EAC are given the leeway to implement it at their own pace. And this has been a sword for the EAC. A sword in the sense that, if you will recall, when there were still 5 members in the EAC, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, there was what was called the coalition of the willing. You had Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda tagging along and always running and implementing decisions or projects of the EAC by themselves. And then on the other hand, you had Tanzania and Burundi also tagging on the opposite direction. So that instead of looking at the regional integration as a framework for collaboration, member states actually still consider it as a vehicle for competition. Today, probably, the coalition of the willing has shifted so that it is Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. And Kenya is left on the other side. And you know, for example, that because of that shifty nature of alliances within the union is what, for example, led to the collapse of this big project, a regional project that was called the LAPSET, Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Corridor. Because of Uganda shifted from the coalition of the willing with Kenya and chose to implement its projects with Tanzania. Therefore, it did not invest in the LAPSET project, and then South Sudan also then ended up pulling out, and Ethiopia also pulled out. Of course, Ethiopia is not a member of the EAC. But those are the issues that we have to deal with or the realities that we have to confront, so that it is about collaboration, collaborative approach, rather than it should be collaborative approach instead of a competitive approach, because then it defeats the whole purpose of integration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Odhiambo. Now we also take the last question about AI. So Mr. Richter can address it.
I think you're part of the answer of this of the question. Yeah. So if Somalia has a AI has a data center which is private run and has actually the ability of looking into own algorithm, that's a good step. But AI is useless. AI is a bit like if you have nice algorithm but no data, is a bit like a bath with no water inside. So, and that's why the question is, what's the application? Yeah, and your colleagues maybe on the other side of the Red Sea has done a very nice a way forward. They have the Hutch and they're doing natural language processing. They basically they're collecting voice data from all over the world and try to then establish services in all of the languages of the world. And I think this is also maybe a way that how if you digitize your language, you can also produce over voice to voice application for people. Yeah, and that's a market for sure. The other question is where you can actually, so there is a market. You have 3 undersea cables coming. If you have data center and algorithm, there's enough data going through your country. It's just a question how you can then tax them, you know, and that's a very challenging question. Europe succeeded to tax Google and Facebook and others, and you saw how they were struggling. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you just need to take it from there, and it's not David against Goliath. It's an indefinite battle. Will never be easy to actually regulate innovators. The second question is where you get the skills from. I think there's a lot of online trainings on AI available, and a lot of online communities. You don't have to travel actually to do AI trainings, and there are very good trainings at the MITs, etc. There are very good online trainings, as you know yourself. But there's also Cassava, you know, in Africa. But I would suggest it's much more effective to work on open educational resources for exactly this one with AI companies from all over the region. That's what I think we try to offer with the AI Alliance, to make homegrown solutions and also find a niche for the AI industry and let's face it, 1% of the world's data centers are in Africa. 1%. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's possible. And just one comment to the colleague that said that the implementation of the custom union and common market protocol is lagging behind. Yes, for sure, that you can have that view, but all the macro data is basically saying the EAC is integrating at its very best, and the inter-regional trade is actually picking by 14% per year. And yes, it comes from very slow growth. Yeah. I'm not making it easier, but regional integration, and that's maybe important to learn also. It's not that you collaborate between the partner states. You do have cooperation where you sit together in ministerial councils and cooperate, exchange best practices and learn from each other, and remind Tanzania that maybe they don't do right, you know. Then the second part is cooperation. You establish joint institutions, and actually work together on joint policy framework. You do have the custom union and common market. And then integration is handing over responsibility for joint projects to a supranational level. So Somalia has handed over their responsibility, their national sovereignty for AFCTA to the EAC. And that's actually what integration is. You don't compete then with the partner states. You actually agree, yes, let's do this together. And the EC is doing this together on the climate negotiations. Very successful. They just presented their vision as the only bloc to the UNFCCC. And they will come back with hundreds of million euros of climate financing because they don't compete, and they do this through the EC Secretariat. but I think you have to differentiate, what is actually then the ability to do, and particularly on the common market, there is a very clear oversight function of the EC Secretariat that is then saying, we have to actually remind Tanzania, and it's our right, and Tanzania is not implementing the national, the regional framework. It is still competitive, but if you agree as a bloc, you don't compete anymore, and that's I think we should look into. The trade data can do better, but you also know who is your biggest external trading partner. So I think it's to your choice also to agree on trading partnerships jointly. Yeah, the EAC is doing the EPA together with UK. It's negotiating with Dubai together, I think, and it's also trying to restart the discussion with the EU. So you can do that. You just have to make sure the boat goes bigger, and not actually shrinking because of national dispute altogether. So, and we learned this in Europe. My last point, very hard. When always there was a crisis, the Second World War, afterwards, the EU was established. There was then the monetary union was an answer on the crisis in the financial markets. There was the finance crisis. There was the COVID crisis. There's now the military crisis. So whenever the EU was under attack, it came out much more stronger. And now I think we have much more responsibility handed over to them. No state in Europe can do own foreign policy anymore alone. So, and that's achievement. We're still competing on areas that have not agreed on regional cooperation or integration level. And you will always have that, because states are still sovereign. There's no United States of Europe. There's a United States of America. You see yourself, how this is working. There's also the EEC political federation that goes into the direction. But I think the Special Envoy rightfully said, let's focus on what is working. It's the common market and the custom union. And then please drive it, and maybe in 10 years, we have other growth numbers, but maybe also you have other responsibilities handed over to regional level, which is not Kenya and Somalia, but which is 8 countries, 320 million.
Thank you so much, Mr. Björn, for addressing those 2 questions. And as you said, cooperation is key, and it's not competing with your partners. Thank you so much again for that. I would like now to give the mic to Mr. Fatir to address the question about customs revenue of the government. Please welcome.
Thank you so much. I also let me contribute to the earlier question on why we are going a little bit slow, because comparing to the context of the region, actually we are going very fast because this region is actually intertwined. It is destiny. And when I say that, the progress that could have happened between Somalia and Kenya sometimes may be a direct effect in any situation or national or other way border related that could happen in DRC or in Tanzania or somewhere else. So that is how this region is actually connected, and that is something that we also trying to build upon some regional integration policies that we all seek for consensus and in the same position at the first place. And we see EAC as a legal instrument or legal enforcement agency or institution, but actually the EAC means us, countries, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda, these are EAC. And before that, I think EAC just start taking effectively in a very not long time ago, according to when it's been established, but starting from the independence of those countries, we have strong bilateral relations in terms of all components that countries cooperate together. So I think with building that strong partnership and enhancing the bilateral relations between all EAC members would also contribute how we can go fast or how we can go slow, because it also identifies that our bilateral relation level, where it's exactly at the point right now. Coming to the question of the customs revenue, I can fairly say that it is one of the biggest income generation for the country and for the government and the state level as well. As I remember last year and the year before, it was actually roughly something between 220 or 210 million dollars roughly a year. So I think it is a wide number that is generating only the port of Mogadishu, and not comparing, also adding on the wider ports that we possess in the country. And further to that, this year the Somali ports, especially port of Berbera and the port of Mogadishu, become the first numbers in terms of facilitating and exporting, importing in the region, in the East African region. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We would like to conclude our session there. We are very sorry that we cannot take more questions. I would like to join my colleagues and contribute to that question about integration in East African community. I would like to say that the EAC is the most integrated trade bloc or regional integration in the continent, in whole of Africa. There are a lot of trade blocs like ECOWAS, SADC, and COMESA, but EAC is so far doing the best in terms of integration. I would like to, but the question, the challenge they have is the overlap of trade memberships. One country like Somalia is a member of COMESA and also EAC. Others are also members in SADC and also ECOWAS. That is bringing a lot of tensions within the EAC members and also for the integration. I would like to conclude our session and mention few points that I have taken from. The challenges that have been mentioned include the customs challenge, customs union challenge, and also within Somalia nationally, the customs are not harmonized yet. Also, there is higher energy cost in Somalia, which makes for investment hard. There is also illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and piracy, and that's also harming the economy of the EAC as a general. Also, there is non-harmonized laws. We also, the panelists also addressed some opportunities for the EAC. Number one is that despite all challenges, there is still a promising market in Somalia for investment. Also, the basic infrastructure was done, like the EAC secretariat was made. Also, there is a long coastline for Somalia, which is 800,000 kilometers square exclusive economic zone, which has a lot of resources like fish, and also that is a market and a resources for the region as a whole. Also, we have established a digital space, which is facing competition, of course, but is open for improvement and can be competent in the region. Also, it was discussed that the common market or tariffs for the EAC will protect Somalia's coastline. There is also mentioned that there is a new sector for economy, which is oil and gas in Somalia, which will also be an addition to the region's economy. It was also discussed that cooperation is key between the member countries of the EAC. Also, it was mentioned a lot of challenge in the EAC as a whole, and not just Somalia. Those include lack of full economic and monetary integration, legal gaps, but also opportunities for the EAC, like utilizing technology in logistics and also artificial intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our first panel there. Thank you so much for your attention, and I also thank my panelists for their time. Thank you so much.